For generations, the relationship between the press and law enforcement has been a complex coexistence, to put it in proper terms. I'm sure others have other ways to describe it. At its best, it can serve as a quasi-partnership whose collective interests can ultimately serve the community good. More often than not, though, the two sides have operated as adversaries where mutual distrust can obscure the truth. What is law enforcement's vision of a productive relationship? What are the rules of this bumpy road? We're fortunate to have the highest ranking law enforcement officials in New Orleans and Louisiana joining us in this discussion today. Ann Kirkpatrick was confirmed as the superintendent of the New Orleans Police Department in November. Superintendent Kirkpatrick has more than 2 decades of command experience, having led departments in Oakland, California, and Spokane, Washington, to name just a couple. Colonel Robert Hodges, at the end, was appointed superintendent of the Louisiana State Police earlier this month, and also serves as a deputy secretary of Public Safety Services. He joined the Louisiana State Police in 1995 and has climbed the ranks from trooper to superintendent. Jason Williams was elected district attorney in New Orleans in 2021 after serving 6 years on the city council. His campaign for the chief prosecutor's seat included calls to disrupt the so-called school-to-prison pipeline while addressing violent crime from murder to domestic violence and sexual assault. Our discussion will be moderated today by Daryl Forges, a familiar face in New Orleans, where he serves as the morning anchor for WDSU News Today. Before arriving in New Orleans, he served as a national correspondent for CNN News Source. Please welcome the panel, and as always, bring your questions.
Well, hello everybody, how y'all doing today? All right, good. I want to start this thing off with a lot of energy. I know that you're eating, so we don't want you to go to sleep after this, all right? We want you to be fully engaged and pay attention. For our panelists, thank you all so much for being here today. I want to keep this as fluid as possible. If there's anything that the district attorney says that you want to chime in on, Chief, you can. Colonel, same thing with you. And then the biggest thing for me is I'll ask a couple of questions, but I really want to open the floor to you all about how we can better strengthen relationships with members of law enforcement in our respective markets and all across the country, all right? But before we really talk about that aspect, I really want to get into exactly what we're dealing with here in the city of New Orleans, Orleans Parish, and the state of Louisiana. Of course, we had issues with crime, and according to some stats now, the crime rate has decreased, not only here, but all across the country. But there are some challenges that law enforcement and top officials still have to deal with on a daily basis. And I want to first get into the law enforcement side, then I'm going to go into the prosecution side. So Colonel Hodges, I want to start with you. On a daily basis, what are you and your department dealing with when it comes to dealing with crime and other issues all across the state of Louisiana?
Well, first, let me just thank Kevin Johnson and National Press Foundation for this personal invitation to be here today, and thank you, Darryl, for being our moderator. With regard to public safety in the state of Louisiana, I think everyone in attendance would agree that crime is not a local problem. It's a state problem. It's a national problem. As a statewide agency, our responsibility is to all those municipalities throughout the state and the 64 parishes. Everyone knows that New Orleans is the crown jewel of the city. So certainly a lot of attention is given to the city, and our partnerships with both the New Orleans Police Department and the district attorney are incredibly important in ensuring public safety here in the city.
Chief, you are fairly new to the city of New Orleans. She has an incredible background, as you heard Mr. Kevin just talk about her resume. You arrived to New Orleans, just a few months ago?
Yes.
A few months ago. So for you, just looking at the issues as soon as you arrived, what are the challenges that you've been dealing with here in the Crescent City?
Sure. Well, first of all, thank you for having me. I happen to have met Kevin Johnson when he was a reporter, and so we've already had some history in the past. So this is my 10th agency. And I started policing over 40 years ago, so I've had quite an evolution of being in the policing world, media relationships. But like anybody coming in from the outside, the number one issue for New Orleans was the fact of the high crime. I believe last year they were rated the murder capital of the United States. And so obviously violent crime was going to be the number one issue to address. And so when you have violent crime in a major city that is also a number 3 in the country on tourism, crime impacts tourism, crime impacts doing business in a community. So business people don't want to do business in a community if it's crime-based. And so these are the things that were going to be top priority for me in making decisions about strategies and how we were going to address crime, which obviously is in partnership with the DA as well as the state, because we don't have the resources. We just flat out don't have enough officers. It's just that simple.
And I was going to ask you about this earlier, but you just brought it up, not having enough officers, but I know that you've all been working incredibly hard to recruit more officers. How is that process going so far?
Well, it's a national problem, and even the colonel and I met just the other day with his executive team. You've got a problem, right? You can't get people to come and be police officers anymore. We are investing a lot of money in even doing television ads now, doing billboards if you drive around town or in the Louisiana market. We're advertising in the normal places we historically have advertised, but our actual applicants are not there. So that is obviously a huge problem because you actually do need law enforcement.
And Colonel Hodges, I'm going to get to you in a minute, Mr. Williams, but Colonel, the chief talked about the issues when it comes to recruiting officers. Is it also not only folks don't want to be officers, but it's also the problem of competing with other states and the pay?
I think all of those things. Pay is obviously a concern as you compete with the southern states and other municipalities and parishes that sometimes pay more than we offer for starting salary. Additionally, as the chief spoke on, the challenges with the public's perception of law enforcement, earning the trust back with the community, and specifically here in Louisiana, our residents and our visitors having their support, knowing that law enforcement is here to provide that public safety piece, whether they visit or whether they live or work in the city, is incredibly important. And with regard to the media and everyone in the room, having a positive message and elevating and leveraging those good events that we and the good work that the men and women of Louisiana State Police do, the New Orleans Police Department, and the District Attorney, when that message is put out through the media properly and quickly, it helps build the public's trust back in public safety. And I think we're on the track to get there. The tides are turning, and I think everyone understands, not only locally, but nationally, that public safety, everything starts there before you can start a family, education, jobs, and enjoy all the culture that New Orleans has to offer. If you don't have the public safety in place, then you won't be able to enjoy any of the other things that we all look forward to do every day in our life.
Absolutely. Mr. Williams, Chief Kirkpatrick talked about the partnership amongst you all, especially you, because once they do find the criminals, get them off the streets, you got to prosecute them. Right. What has been the challenges been like for you and the DA's office when it comes to prosecuting these cases and also the other big issues you're having as of right now?
So, first and foremost, New Orleans is a very unique place. I think, as all of you can tell, it's a port city, it's a destination city. We are not just, the public safety issue is not just one in which you're policing residents. We have a transient population that is always flowing in and out. Oftentimes, if there's a shooting in the French Quarter or issue in the French Quarter, that is not always an Orleans Parish resident. The victim's not always an Orleans Parish resident. That adds a different complexity to policing and prosecuting in that area. Now you add to that a situation where most of you all reported on, and everyone was watching during the COVID shutdown. We put ourselves in a self-induced coma to survive this pandemic, in which we all watched the news nonstop. And we now, Walter Isaacson sometimes laments that he caused a problem when he created a 24-hour news cycle, because we never get a break from it. But you all showed the ugly warts and molds of the American criminal legal system. That includes misogyny, it includes sexism, it includes race, and whether it's the George Floyd coverage or the Breonna Taylor coverage, it led people to believe that they don't want to be law enforcement anymore. And it's really hard to recruit police officers, and really hard to recruit prosecutors. And the truth of what we say when we're in these spaces is, be the change you seek. If you see problems with a system, being a part of that system to make it better is how you can improve it. But we have a very difficult time. It used to be the main job someone wanted when they got out of law school was they'd go to the DA's office, they would learn how to try cases, they'd go anywhere in the world and do it. Tulane and Broad, which is our criminal courthouse, is handling cases every single day of the week. In other parishes, it might be 1 week on, 1 week off. Tulane and Broad, every day, all day. That is relentless, and we're doing it at a time when there is more distrust in law enforcement than there has ever been, which means sometimes witnesses who actually call the police don't want to show up in court, either from fear of retaliation or distrust of the system. And sometimes it's hard to figure out which one of those things is the strongest.
So how about when it comes to cases? Because I was listening to what the chief and what the colonel was saying about the fact that they don't have, trying to get more officers and recruit more officers. That also impacts you when you go to the courtroom, correct? When it comes to how some of these officers fill out paperwork and other things like that. How does it impact you when you take evidence to the courtroom?
You know, we've got, there's a big difference between probable cause to make an arrest and proving a case beyond a reasonable doubt in a parish that has a certain amount of skepticism, because we've been the incarceration capital of the planet, the exoneration capital of the planet, and the murder capital of the planet, all in the same years, meaning what we were doing wasn't getting the right people all the time. And so that legacy of that impacts whether or not people show up. Now, I personally try cases in court, and out of the 10 cases I've tried in a year and a half's time, only one of those cases had eyewitnesses who came to say what they saw. Now, we knew there were a number of witnesses out there, but they're not participating. This is happening at a time when you've got CSI, whatever, Law and Order, whatever, you've got all these shows, so all this technology and all this evidence, and you see cases, you see crimes committed and solved in an hour and prosecuted in an hour. And it just simply does not work like that. So there's a false expectation of what you will see in court. And at the same time, this state decided that unanimity was important. And so we voted as a state, Republicans, Democrats, blacks and whites, liberals and conservatives, said 12 out of 12 jurors need to decide guilt or innocence. But that's a new thing that is now in place since the COVID shutdown. And as we all can agree, Americans don't like to agree on the weather right now, so much less agreeing on a person's guilt. It has made things more challenging.
And you took on a big challenge too, because you got elected during COVID, during the height of the pandemic, and then boom, you had all these other things happening. I got to ask you, go back to you, Chief Kirkpatrick. For you and for your office, it's all about teamwork, right? You talked about that earlier between all the state agencies. We have a new governor now, Governor Jeff Landry. Has he talked to you about how he would like to maybe partner up? I know you've spoke with him about the things you're going to do with state police. Has he spoken to you about what he would like to do when it comes to you and the NOPD and solving and reducing crime in this city?
Well, I have not personally spoken with the new governor yet. I've certainly spoken with his committee on public safety, quite a few of those committee members, but very specifically, the colonel and I literally met 2 days ago. As I said, he brought his executive team in. I brought my my executive team in, and we had exactly that type of conversation. The governor has given us through the state patrol, and you can actually speak to it, but a new troop that we will have in New Orleans. And the idea is that we are not in competition. We are in partnership. We must work in teamwork. It's not about anyone taking over. The State Patrol is not coming in and taking over New Orleans. We are in partnership. They will be doing certain things we can't. And we have also, will be doing some things that will be different for them. So teamwork matters. I call it we got to dance together. Now, are we going to occasionally step on each other's toes? Occasionally. But that doesn't mean we're not a team. We learn the dance. We learn to be partners in it. Go ahead,
Speak on
Colonel.
that, Colonel?
So it was a very productive meeting, a lot of familiar faces in the room between New Orleans Police Department and Louisiana State Police. Many of the men and women years ago worked for the New Orleans Police Department are now state troopers. So they too, like myself, who's a native of New Orleans, have a vested interest in the city and this partnership. Law enforcement, as we've already discussed, the numbers being low, you can't be successful today without the partnerships. But it's additionally with law enforcement collectively with the district attorneys, with the judges. It's a three-tiered system. And so we understand that, and I think that's why all three of us are up here today discussing the important things for the city of New Orleans. But working together, as the chief mentioned, certain assets and things, because in government, local has X number of dollars, state has a little more, and then the federal government has more. And they're also going to be a partner with us in a lot of things. And there's current partnerships that already exist. This just specifically gives more of a detailed partnership for the city of New Orleans. As everyone's aware, the legislature's in session right now, and the priority is redistricting, and then they will move to a crime session. And during that crime session, they will outline some specific details and initiatives that they want Chief Kirkpatrick and I to accomplish while working together in New Orleans. So I'd rather not comment specifically on the exact things that we're going to do. Clearly, it's going to be to eliminate violent crime and provide public safety to our city every day, and not just in New Orleans, but across the entire city. I'm sorry, not just in the French Quarter, but across the city. We have the upcoming Mardi Gras coming. Carnival season will be upon us very soon.
Hope y'all are staying for that, by the way.
Yeah.
Get you a lot of king cake.
And so our troopers will be in partnership with the New Orleans Police Department, once again, like we've done for the last many decades. In my 28 plus years, I've been involved with all Mardi Gras and our support and partnership with the city. And so we will have 130 troopers here to complement the New Orleans Police Department as we have another successful Mardi Gras for the world to see. And then if we fast forward 13 months, we'll be hosting the Super Bowl. And I'm certain as a press organization that usually draws a few extra media personnel. And we want to brand the city and bring it back to where District Attorney Williams, Chief Kirkpatrick, and myself know it can be, and that the public feels safe and feels excited to come to New Orleans, visit, and enjoy all the culture we have to offer. And that's what this partnership is going to provide. But more importantly, let's not forget about our men and women who work and live in the city every day. And that's why our focus is not just on the French Quarter, although that's important. It's citywide. Many of the folks who work in New Orleans don't all live in the French Quarter. They live across the city and the parish. And we want to ensure that their safety is protected when they're home, when they're at school, when they're going to the grocery, and everything going to faith-based for their worship on the weekends, wherever that may be. Public safety needs to be in every part of it, and not just for our visiting tourists.
Absolutely, and hopefully the Saints will be in that Super Bowl in 2025. So I want to move on really quickly, since you all give you an idea of what we're dealing with, the top members of law enforcement are dealing with in the city of New Orleans, Orleans Parish, and the state of Louisiana. I want to now move on to the relationship now with the press and to the media.
Okay.
DA Williams, I want to start with you, Mr. Williams. When it comes to, we always talked about that word, the P word, partnership, right? But how important is it to not only have that partnership with the folks that are here in this room, but also, I call it the T word, transparency. Also being transparent and saying, hey, this is really what is going on, especially when you're dealing with these cases. Talk about the relationship that you have with members of media in New Orleans and where you would like to see it to go in the future.
So, there's present company excluded, right? You have good and bad journalists. You have good and bad lawyers. You have good and bad troopers. You have good and bad police officers. Some people operate at a higher level than others. There's a lot of pressure on both professions, law enforcement and journalists, to get it out quick. Solve the case quick, make a quick arrest, prosecute the case quick, or tell the news story quick. And being the first to tell the story, sometimes you might be first, but you might not be as complete or as accurate as necessary. And that's tough, and that's a real interesting pain point for both professions, because accuracy is so vital in both of our works. I don't know whether it's the papers or the news desk or who controls how much time they give you to tell a story, but it is hard to really tell a complete story in the short window that you all have to tell it. And oftentimes there's a lot more that truly needs to be said. And so I do believe that transparency is important for my work. That's why we have public-facing dashboards that show the numbers in everything, all the work that we do. And trust is also important. There was a number of people when the new governor got elected, there was a number of people in the media who really wanted to see the DA, who's a Democrat, and the governor-elect, who's a Republican, fight about everything. They thought that would be good news, right? I don't understand why it's better news to see the 3% of things we disagree on rather than the 97% of things that we do agree on. But whether it's the country or the world now, there seems to be this sort of idea that it's more interesting when there's conflict rather than when there's agreement. And so I think it's really important to sometimes look at the stories that don't always get that interest or immediately pull one's attention. We were talking about the case of Young Greatness very recently, which was a case that talks about young people, chronic absenteeism in schools, and truancy, and violent crime, and the adults that are pulling young people into violent crime. But there was very little discussion by the media because it wasn't front of mind about how many kids were actually truant, what a crisis we were in pre-pandemic. Right. 1 in 5 American kids chronically absent. Now it's nearly a third, meaning there's some kids who teachers don't even know their names. They're not even on the roster. It's not like a kid skipping school. I'm talking about not involved in anybody's school in elementary and high school. And what do you think those kids are? Those kids are in the street committing crime. So there's that balance for us all to fight against the tide of getting information or getting things done quickly and getting them done accurately.
Chief, you've been here for a few months, like I said, but as soon as you came in, you were pretty open and transparent with talking to members of the media off the top. You're still fairly new, and you're still feeling your way around and understanding the state and the city and the culture. Talk about the relationship that you want to continue to build with the members of the media here in New Orleans.
Well, I've been in the media arena, like I said, for many, many years since I became a chief of police back in 1996. Do I have anybody from the California market here? Okay. Of those who raise their hand, how many of you are in the Bay Area? Okay, all right. Anybody from Washington State? Okay. What area, what's your market?
Yakima.
You're Yakima, where are you? Seattle, Spokane?
Sorry, I'm from New Jersey, but I'm talking about Seattle.
What'd she say?
Seattle.
Seattle market, okay. Who's Chicago? I was a bureau chief in Chicago. Anybody in Chicago in the room? All right. Well, the reason I ask is that I've had so many wide and varied relationships. And I've also inherited agencies where the PIOs of that agency said, no comment. We do the no comment. So I've had such a wide variety. So first and foremost, my personal media philosophy is that there is no such thing as no comment. You always comment, but I may not. I mean, I think so. Hey, but let me tell you what I was trained on my side of the market when I was trained in media. Feed the sharks. If you don't feed the sharks, you're going to make something up. Okay, so that's why you do, but absolutely, you need to actually communicate. Whether or not you like each other, likability has nothing to do with it. You must communicate. I am actually, and I can only use the word, so you can either believe me or not. I am an absolute 100% believer that we must have free speech. Speech in our country, free speech, keeps police power and government power in check. Okay? So there's a role for us, but communicating matters. Whether or not you properly capture what I say or do, that's a different story, because it is relational, and if we insult each other, offend each other, and we don't get it right with each other, we do violate relationship. But I can continue to be in communication with people who violate, and yet this tendency is, well, should we hold you at bay because one or few of you will just go ahead and violate regardless. What do we do with you? Do you have relationship when we have that event going on? Okay, so those are the challenging questions regarding media. But here in New Orleans, I want to be open and answer questions and keep communication going. So far in the New Orleans market, right now, my experience has been very good, very good.
Before I get to the Colonel, after I talk to the Colonel, I'm going to open up for questions. So once I get done asking the Colonel questions for that end, or you have a question? That's already great. I'm going to get to you.
I bet you do.
So once I get done with the Colonel, I'll go and go to you first, and then we'll go around, because at this point, I really want to hear from you all, and what you all have to say to the folks that are up here. So Colonel, you're fairly new in your position too, correct? You've been for what, a month, 2 months?
Just a couple weeks.
Oh, God bless you. Okay, cool. So kind of talk about the relationship that you and your department would like to have with the media moving forward as well.
So, State Police has a public affairs section. My team is here today led by Captain Nick Manali in the back. And we're a little unique. Our public information officers or troopers assigned to each of the 9 patrol troops throughout the state. Those who are here locally know that. So they're actually gun-toting, arresting, full-fledged police officers. Not to say it's not a bad idea to have some civilians. We've just elected to keep it that way because they come from the ranks. We feel like that they can report more accurately on the things that happen in our agency. We, in addition to those, obviously there's regional supervisors, and sometimes we have some other community-based troopers that assist them with their duties and responsibilities, interacting with the press locally across the state to get the message out. So let's just look back a few months. Darryl, remember we had the super fog or the smog that tragically involved over 160 vehicles and 7 fatalities. And that was a major event that lasted multiple days. It was on Interstate 55, just west and a little north of New Orleans. But it impacted many who live and work here in the city. And we were very accurate and timely with our dissemination of information on all our platforms. We use everything that y'all all use: Facebook, Twitter X, Instagram, and of course YouTube. And we have those troopers along collectively, since this was a major event, something we hadn't experienced in many years with that volume of vehicles, although other states have. We brought in other public information officer troopers from the area, from outside the area rather, across the state in to help with that messaging, because we wanted the public to know what was going on, when roads would reopen, what was the status of those injured and those who lost their life. Those were big questions. And would it happen again? And what would we do differently or better? And we talk about partnerships. It's real big with the state of Louisiana. We're talking interstate system, our Department of Transportation and Development, the DOTD. But getting that messaging out, but as both DA Williams and Chief Kirkpatrick spoke on moments ago, we would rather be accurate and right than first. And I understand y'all's business. I get it. I share your passion to be the first. I understand that. And I know you have a lot of pressures from the presidents and CEOs and shareholders of the publicly traded media groups that are most, and that is expected. And you want to live up to that expectation. But it's real hard and difficult for us if multiple people from the same outlet call and ask the same questions and not just having one point of contact like we do for that specific area, so we can have a constant message. And I understand, as just as Darrell is with WDSU and we have other local stations, we're going to get the message out equally to all. We want to share our information for public safety with all the outlets, not just one. We don't want to play favorites. Doesn't matter how small or how big. Everyone deserves to have the information timely and accurately, whether it's a missing child, whether it's a violent crime, a traffic incident like we had with the super fog back in October, or let's just talk about the last couple days. The freeze, right? We've had to close interstates across the state. Very difficult for us as an agency, our partners with the local police and sheriff's departments who helped us out significantly. We can't do the job alone as state police, even though our responsibility outside of the incorporated city limits by statute is delegated to the state police and the sheriffs. We needed everyone, but our communication with media and getting out what roads were closed for your safety, the citizens, all the residents and visitors, as y'all probably saw at Lake Charles area, we had some very complex crashes, vehicle crashes. We don't call them accidents. They changed that some years back. But with that being said, it took time to clear the road. Motorists are stranded. We know how frustrating that is. Kind of like you're waiting for us to get back with you on a question because you're going to, we don't say print anymore, but you're going live on air and you got to get the message out. We want to get that message out because the last thing we need is someone's family member or loved one saying, I can't get my husband or my elderly parent off the road, and how we're going to get them. And you probably, some of y'all covered it, when you get out of your vehicle as a trooper, we don't have spikes on our shoes, so there's ice, and we have to move around and get vehicles off. And I thought the media, in partnership with state police, did an excellent job getting those messages out. I don't have the numbers here, but I'll refrain from looking at them again, but we reached hundreds of thousands of people, thanks to you all, getting our message, sharing, clicking, doing what you do. So the partnership is incredibly important. We just need to make sure we get the right road closure, the right road opening. As timely as we want to close it, let's get it that timely and accurate information as we get it open. So we're thankful, whether it's the smallest crime to the biggest crime or just a road hazard, we want to ensure that that message gets out to y'all timely. And I think, with the addition, as Chief Kirkpatrick discussed with the New Orleans Police Department, I'm certain we'll have a dedicated public information officer trooper assigned to get that message out as timely as we have been in the last few weeks.
Now, Colonel, you said freeze, and I saw some faces go freeze. What, are you serious? No, in Louisiana, we cannot drive in freeze, all right?
Darrell, let me
I'm not talking about snow, we're just talking about freeze.
where's our West Coast affiliates? Anybody from the West Coast? So Louisiana this past summer experienced our first wildfires. So we didn't have California Highway Patrol available like we did after Katrina, where I was a young sergeant, to help us come in and say, how do you battle that? It was new to all of us. And so once again, it was in the western part of the state in rural Beauregard Parish, which is north of Lake Charles, and a little further up in Alexandria and rural Vernon Parish. But the wildfires were just an unexpected disaster. But as troopers, as police officers, as sheriff's deputies, our job is public safety, and it's helping others. And that has always been the case, and that's why we're up here today. We're serving the public and their interest through public safety. But those wildfires are very difficult and challenging for us. We relied heavily on our local fire departments and our emergency response and using a lot of our air assets, but not that we're experts, but you talked to freeze, and then we went to wildfire, and who knows what's around the next corner. But I think I speak for everyone on this stage. We're up for the next challenge, we're up to task, and we're gonna deliver what y'all expect of us.
And Karen, I will say you all did a really good job of keeping us informed during the events that were happening over this past week. Now it's y'all's time. We want to move it over now to questioning with you all. So say your name, sorry, go ahead. Sorry, Kevin.
Before we start, I'll grab you in just a minute. I just want to let folks know, just in case they might be startled to see the colonel jump off the stage here at 1 o'clock. He's due at another meeting. It's not a 911 call. You don't have to jump on your phones. So I just wanted to put that to rest. But first question.
So give us your name, where you work with, and then your question.
Yeah, good afternoon. Chris Welty, Fox 8 from here in New Orleans. Superintendent Kirkpatrick, in your opening remarks, you mentioned that crime impacts business, tourism, so on and so forth. Further into the discussion, you mentioned that you feel like it's important to be open and have lots of communication with the media and the public concerning what's going on within the city of New Orleans.
Right.
We've had several high-profile cases, the murder of a tourist. We had 3 people shot in Algiers last weekend, or last week, I should say. And we haven't heard from you publicly. When will we hear from you? When will we hear from your public information department? I think the public is, waiting to hear from their leader.
I guess I don't know why you say that. You did a report of one of the media, a couple of the media, knowing that one of our deaths the other week was of a tourist, so I'm not sure.
So we did not
what
get
you're
that
saying.
information, though, from you or NOPD.
Right.
We were getting that information from our sources, and we had television stations from Washington State reaching out to us, confirming that it was a tourist. When will you, as a leader, we've seen other NOPD leaders, former Superintendent Sean Ferguson, interim Superintendent Michelle Woodfork, we've seen other NOPD leadership get in front of the public when there is a high-profile case, and we've yet to see that from you. When will we?
Well, thank you for bringing it to my attention. Let's start now. Okay? Thanks. Thanks for bringing it to my attention.
Is that your only comment on the topic? Do you feel like the public should have heard from you
I think that
following the death of a tourist?
with respect to, from me, think that because we have a PIO team, that was not, at the time, no one came and said, it needs to be you to roll out. I also expect to be advised. And so you could have called, and I think a lot of you have my number, and I would have been happy to be the one to address it. But since you have brought it up, I take your counsel, and let's begin today. How about that? You asked me a specific question, when will it start? Let's start today. Okay? So thank you.
All right, thank you so much. All right, anyone else with their questioning? Yes, sir. Oh, I'm sorry, Kevin. I'm sorry, guys.
Hi, I'm Michael Sipes. I'm with KL Fly in Lafayette. Colonel Hodges, these are both for you since you're going to be leaving. One, you're taking over a department that has come under fire in the recent couple years, especially with the Ronald Green case and the lack of transparency coming out of that. What are you planning on doing in your first year taking over that position?
Well, my predecessor, Colonel Davis, put a lot of reform things in place, and I plan to build on those successes. I think he proved to everyone that the measures and things that are in place now should minimize, if not eliminate completely, the risk of something like that happening again on the hands of troopers. And to build on those successes, and I don't want to go into specific details about all the reforms, but I am fortunate to take over the agency, I think, at a good time where the public's trust, and that's probably the biggest thing, is continuing to improve. And not only the public's trust, but the media's trust, that we will get timely information to you. And keep in mind, I'm going to continue to answer your question, but I want to piggyback what DA Williams said. Everyone watches television, Law and Order and CSI, and those investigations are very complex. And to Chief Kirkpatrick's question regarding the homicide. Every loss of life is important. It doesn't matter if it was a traffic crash or if it was just an accidental death. We investigate them the same way, and they require interviews. They require video review from local businesses or other witnesses, and they require talking with the officers, troopers, or deputies that are involved, and everybody wants an answer very quick. And to your point about Ronald Green, yes, we should have done better. And the things that we did from a media perspective, we should have got out in front of it, and we didn't. However, moving forward, I think we've proven the last 3.5 years, or 3+ years under Colonel Davis's reign, that we have done that and started to rebuild not only the public's trust, but the media's trust in how we get the information out, how we handle operations, how we set some specific benchmarks in place to ensure training of both existing troopers and new troopers, and just really be, the best way to describe it is, more prepared and trained for any type of incident that we handle, from the smallest to the largest. And I think we were lacking there, and that's what he was able to bring, and I'm going to build on that success and continue to elevate the agency to where we need to be.
All right, I have one more question for you. Since COVID in Mardi Gras, and you guys are addressed the lack of officers, last 2 years, we've heard from our sources inside the state police that they feel like they are stretched thin to support New Orleans, and they're not helping the other cities. Lafayette has Mardi Gras, Baton Rouge, Lake Charles does theirs as well. Do you feel that's the best resources? Because we hear it, that we're just stretched too thin.
So to speak to Lafayette, we do have 35 motorcycles and 50 riders across the state. They're deployed at all the troops. So we do have visibility and assistance with traffic control at Carnival in Lafayette, Shreveport, Houma, Baton Rouge, and other municipalities that have their own Mardi Gras on a small scale. We don't send all the bikes to New Orleans because we understand the importance of public safety statewide. In addition to our focus in New Orleans, we have done enforcement details, specifically plainclothes initiated with patrol support in Alexandria, Baton Rouge, Shreveport, Lake Charles, Vanderbilt, Covington area, Houma, Gray area, where other troops reside. And it just doesn't receive the same amount of press because, again, it's not the tourist city of New Orleans. But our obligation and commitment is to all those agents, all of those cities and those residents. And we've continued to do that, and they do have local media that picks up on it. I hope, Mr. Sipes, that you get some of those important initiatives that we have in those areas, because violent crime is not a New Orleans problem. As we've talked, it's not a Louisiana problem, it's a national problem. And so some hot spots are Shreveport and Baton Rouge, who have similar crime challenges that the city of New Orleans has, and we're partnering with those local agencies as well as our federal agencies because they have the biggest resources. And I truly believe if you look, that's why crime's down, because what we're doing here in Louisiana is not any different from what we're doing across the country. Everybody's in the partnership business in law enforcement because we don't have the resources that we'd like to have due to recruiting and COVID and pay and all those other things, and the lack of trust in the public, and of course the negative reporting, I'm sorry to say, but that's a piece of it. Every part of it means something to us. No part is unimportant, and without all of success in all of those endeavors, we don't get to where we need to be, where Chief Kirkpatrick has a number of officers that she feels confident with, that can lead every day to do the robust enforcement to make the public feel safe and confident in the city and want to visit here, live here, and to be a part of the state. Thank you for the question.
Darryl, can I just piggyback
Absolutely,
on that?
go ahead.
And I understood, I heard the same thing, because I had the same conversation with the former governor, John Bell Edwards, about getting more state police troopers here when I was president of city council. And he said, these other parishes need it too, Jason, I can't do it. But this is a moment. There's a strategic effort between the governor, the attorney general, and the colonel, and the police chief. And if you have a fire in your house and it starts in the living room and all those curtains are ablaze, every room shouldn't get equal amounts of water. You got to focus on the hot spot. And I think if you can come up with good strategies and partnerships, you can shift to the next hot spot. I mean, the mayor is catching hell up in Bogalusa right now, right? I mean, they do not have the infrastructure to push back on crime the way we have that here. And so we can put together some strategies and then shift that to a small place like Bogalusa. We could put that fire out a whole lot quicker. So I think this is a new moment I think we're in terms of how we're strategizing and collaborating. But I think these new partnerships are going to let us yield some better results than we've gotten in the past.
We have a question here.
All right.
Rick Urbach, News Director, WGNO. I have a question for the chief and one for the colonel. I'll start with the colonel because I know you have to blast out of here. First of all, your media team in the New Orleans area, 5-star. They're very helpful, accommodating, and I always think we should applaud them when they do their job, so thank you. My question is, I know a lot of people in law enforcement in the different communities, and their dream was always to work for the Louisiana State Police. That was the gem, 5, 10 years ago. What happened? Why isn't that a destination today?
Well, I think a lot of the things I already discussed, public trust. We had some national events that changed people's opinion of law enforcement. When people want to serve in the public, they need support. It's a thankless job, but when you're concerned about your actions being tried in the media before you've even had a chance to complete the investigation, as I talked about earlier, we have to trust the process, and I realize the trust is not there yet, but investigations are complex. I spent half of my career in investigations and half in patrol, and so I can speak candidly to those things, and we just can't make a decision in 24 hours like you want. And when someone shows you part of the video, it's only the part that fits their narrative. And I understand that the public's asking, and your boss, and the program manager's asking, everybody's got a deadline. But again, I can't stress enough, we want to be accurate and right. And in order to do that, we have to look at the video. We have to interview the trooper or the officer or the deputy. And we have to understand what public threat was to them. Was someone there feeling that their life was in danger, or the trooper or officer themselves? And that builds in. You cannot watch a video and not have interviewed the witnesses, and not have reviewed additional video, or not reviewed the entire video. So I'm feeling, and what I said earlier, I'm confident that the tide is turning with law enforcement. People are coming out. The governor says, come home. Didn't he say that in his speech at inauguration on the 7th, the historical night, since we had to move it for the weather? He said, come home. And that's what we're asking our men and women to come home to New Orleans, to come home to Louisiana and serve. And I think as these partnerships exist, I think as our relationship with the media continues to improve, we have events like this and we talk openly, people feel the confidence and say, well, the media might wait before they release that story to get a few more details to make sure they're right. Then that person who's thinking of a career in law enforcement feels like, okay, I'm not going to be on the 5 o'clock news. I'm not going to be on every social media outlet, and I'm not going to find myself not only out of a job and possibly prosecuted criminally through the media, but my reputation is still going to be intact. When you take a job with a private corporation and something happens where you didn't follow the procedure or you didn't follow the rules, you're probably terminated, fired, or disciplined. But in the law enforcement community, you're tried on television, you're tried online, and it's very difficult. So why would someone want to engage in a career that already is underpaid to have their entire reputation and their family reputation affected directly, where they can't go on to live the rest of their life because they've been permanently labeled by something that wasn't the right story? And to the media's point, sometimes they did the wrong thing. But it's a small percentage, as D.A. Williams said. It's a very small percentage of the good and the bad. People that are in public safety, they're here to make a difference. They're here to help others. And they know now you have to do it the right way. Through clear communication, through professionalism, respect of all citizens. Doesn't matter race, color, creed, or religious affiliation. Those have no bearing. We just want to help people. It's others who create the narrative to try to bring attention. It's, I hope that answers your question. It's time.
Was that for you?
Thanks to everyone here. I enjoyed my time. I'm sorry I had a previous engagement. When we put this on the calendar, I was originally going to conclude at 1, and I have to get out to Lake Charles.
Sure.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Colonel.
And I believe you had a second question as well, correct, for the chief?
Yeah.
Absolutely. It's good to see you, sir. Thank you so much. Thank you.
Thank you. So it's just you and me, we get
There you
that.
go, you know.
Sorry I took all the time.
It's okay.
All good.
Chief, this question is for you. I've been in town for 14 years. When I first got here, we had over 1,700 police officers on
Yeah.
the streets of New Orleans. Today, we're below, or that are around 900.
Yes, sir.
There's a perception that there are a lot of officers in desk jobs. Has there been any thought given to getting them from behind the desk and into patrol cars?
That's a very fair question, because that's one of the things as an outsider, you kind of come in and you go, okay, are we assigned properly? Because we are a 900 officer team today. So we cannot police the way we did when we were a 1,200 agency. So there has been some assessment on my part. So for instance, there will be probably some reduction of the top of ranks. There will be some more promotions that will be made, but at the same time, do you also reduce the size of the command, things of that nature. Some of that I wanted to occur through natural attrition, but yes, there is my assessment that we need to put some positions more operationally. So it is fair, and that's one of the things that when I came on board, I wanted to take 3 months to see, are we functionally where we need to be? It's a fair, very fair question. You know, there's a lot of demand on traffic. Well, they depleted the traffic unit in order to put officers on the street to handle 911 calls. All of those kind of things, are we properly balanced functionally?
Thank you, and my apologies for not welcoming you to New Orleans. Well,
Thank you. Everybody has been welcoming. I appreciate it very much.
Absolutely. Any other questions? Yes.
Hi, Chief. Chris Joseph with Fox 8. Welcome to New Orleans.
Yeah, thank you. So you're Fox and you're Fox, right?
Yeah.
Okay, same.
Oh, that's not.
I don't think I'm going to get you confused, trust me. So go ahead. Go ahead, Chris.
Chief, to your department's credit, you do send out the major event logs on a daily basis.
Yes.
One of the things I have experienced is when requesting incident reports or internal affairs reports or use of force reports, told submitted through the New Orleans City Index, and what that comes with is bureaucratic delays.
Okay.
That comes with legal delays. Would you be amenable to directly releasing those reports without having to file that request each and every time and bringing in an entirely different department?
Yeah.
That undermines transparency.
So what I would prefer, so even like with Chris, here my other Chris, and this Chris, these questions are fair to me, but what they do is they put me on a spot. And so I am open, and like my other Chris's criticism of me, as well as you're making a request about the bureaucracy. I would have appreciated and am very open if you had simply had you or your editors call me and say, hey, can we sit down and talk about these things? You may not be aware of the bureaucracy. You may not be aware of a historical approach to media. That would have been welcomed, and that's a part of media-police relationships, are the forums, the correct forums, for which to maybe bring these issues up. Am I open to trying to do some changes? 100%. Please come and make an appointment with me where that is probably a better forum for that kind of thing. Okay?
All right. Any
Thank
other
you, Chris.
questions?
Hi, Carly Luca with KALB in Alexandria. I'm new to Louisiana too, so
Okay,
figuring it out together.
Welcome.
I wanted to ask, we talked a lot about how there's good and bad journalists and good and bad police officers, good and bad troopers.
Right.
As journalists, we have events like this to try to be the good journalists and make sure that we are covering things in a way that is fair and accurate. I was wondering, especially with your experience at multiple agencies,
Yes.
how does that look on the law enforcement side to address some of the perceived cultural issues within law enforcement? Are those conversations and summits happening?
Oh, yes. The cultural issues within law enforcement are like a national topic if you go around the country. I used to teach them before coming here, and I was aligned with teaching for an FBI leadership association. It was one of my topics. How do you create culture change? Is there culture change needed? Yes. That's usually why you have consent decrees in certain cities around the country. It's a forced policy changes in order to get culture change. I will tell you that my observation and experience so far in New Orleans, you have absolutely a fabulous New Orleans Police Department that has experienced a great deal of evolution and culture. Years ago, we never talked about the wellness of an officer. You better suck it up. These things are tremendous culture changes we're having. The issue of the DA and I were at a meeting this morning. The mindset of police today, we do recognize that if we're going to do anything about crime reduction, it really has to be talking about what are the causes of crime, not the let's go lock you up approach. So there is a role and a place for that, as we all know. But culture must shift. You will never get to culture change until people think differently, not just force change of behavior by a policy. You'll get to true culture change when people go, I look at that totally differently. So yes, it is alive and well.
Before we get to the next question, I want to ask you, I know we talked to the chief and the colonel before he left about this, but how the recent events either drew people to or away from law enforcement.
Right.
From a prosecution side, in the DA's office, are you seeing where folks were either not wanting to work as a public service in prosecution, or has it been a thing where it's like, you know what, I do want to get into this, it's a bit of driving force? What have you been seeing?
I think people see law enforcement as something that they are not interested in being a part of. Not in the same way that it exists before. There was a natural, just sort of coming out of law school, running the prosecutor's office. That's where I can learn the most. It still is where you can learn the most. And some of that comes from hearing those times when the criminal legal system got it wrong, right? I used to be on the board of the Innocence Project. I realize that there have been wrongful convictions. We work really hard in this office to make sure that every person, regardless of lot in life, regardless of the amount of evidence against that person, that they have a fair trial, right? And there are a lot of folks on the left, right, who believe that that making sure the system is fair should take some of the punch away from a prosecution. If someone's committed a first-degree murder, or second-degree murder, or rape, they deserve swift, strong, accurate prosecutions. That's public safety, smart on justice, being progressive. If we talk about brain surgery, you know the most progressive brain surgeon you could find. But in law enforcement, there's this thought that, oh, that's different from traditional public safety. And we've got to make sure that these aren't bookends, they aren't polar opposites. The day job still has to exist. We have a civil rights division that's making sure that we're reckoning with the sins of the past. We have trainings, like the chief was talking about, to make sure that we can change the culture of prosecutors. Don't hide evidence. It's not about how many wins you get in court. It's about making the community safer. It's about getting it right. It's about making sure that the process is fair. And the left and the right love to wear a jersey and say that I believe in this thing, which means that other side is absolutely wrong. And that's a struggle in the criminal legal system, because people talk about murder and armed robbery, they don't talk about rape the same way. Sexual assaults have been going through the roof in this country for years, and it is not a point of interest. College campuses, oh my God, I was mortified when my daughter went off to college because I know the rate of sexual assaults on college campuses that are not reported at all. But that's not front of mind. It's just as violent as homicides. And so it's going to take a lot of work for us to really, truly be honest about all the warts and moles that exist. And we can't throw the baby out with the bathwater because we need the criminal legal system to be able to live a free and safe existence in a community. It's necessary.
Absolutely. More questions? Kevin, is there anybody that had? Yes, ma'am.
Hi, Kieran Chawla, Unfiltered with Kieran out of Baton Rouge. I guess my question is for all of us. We're all obviously media, but in having our sessions that were earlier, I think there's a big distrust built that a press release, it's not going to say much in it. So the trust has broken between what we as media get from police, but we all have sources. We're going to go with what our sources tell us, especially when that credibility is built. They're going to give us more information. So what do you do to rebuild that trust? Because given the day and age we're in, where social media has also become an avenue, and a crime happens in my neighborhood, now you have everybody saying, why is the police here? Why is it here? Why is it here? It's spreading so fast. I mean, as a reporter, I would assume you guys would want it out as fast as possible, accurately, to dispel rumors. So how do you fix this distrust between the media and the police? Or begin to?
Well, you mentioned the word credibility, and you mentioned, so I think a lot of times we have to have our definitions where we are using one word and we may have two different assignment of meanings. So in our world, what is a credible journalist? And in your world, you might have a different definition of what a journalist is all about. Do you have is a journalist a gotcha kind of person? Or is that, or what if your information is wrong and is agendized? And so this is where relationship breaks. It's no different when police violate the relationship of trust with the police, with the community. It's no different in-house when we violate the trust with one another. It's usually in the relationship, and my expectation of what a professional journalist is might be different what you think a professional journalist is. And so sometimes we've got to have the credibility of, are we even on the right sheet of music of my expectation of what a professional journalist is supposed to be? Because as soon as you don't meet that, I don't think you're credible, right? These are basic foundations of understanding leadership. They're basic in understanding how relationships work, what makes a person credible. Do you follow up? Do you follow through? Is your information accurate? And how do you actually engage me? How do I engage you? What is respect to me is not respect to you. And so that's what makes, if I think I've been disrespected, what is my natural tendency? You're not credible. But facts also are not true. Now here's what I want you to think about. Facts alone are not true until they are in context. You can have a fact that is actually not a truth, and that's what happens in a court of law. We bring the facts of a case to the prosecutor. The prosecutor is going to frame it in a context that leads to the truth of the matter. So a fact alone must have context before it's true, and that's what makes something credible. I can use a word, let me give you an example. Let's say my brother and I are joking, and you hear us out in the hallway, and I say to my little brother, go jump off a cliff. Those are the words. That is a fact. You heard those words. To my little brother and I, we're just joking. Or are those words in another context? Did I just threaten him? Did I just encourage for him to actually take his life? All you heard were the words. The words are the fact. But until they're actually in the real context, you do not get the truth. And that's what breaks credibility. is until the fact is in the truth. And we get too quick to try to assign a meaning to a fact. And then we have total, and that's why we go, that's not what I meant. Okay, so that's what breaks credibility and that's what breaks trust, because we don't go back to the basics of, well, the basic word. What does professional mean? What does respect mean? What does a fact mean? All of that kind of stuff. That's my assessment of it.
Can I chime in on what Ms.
Yeah,
Charlotte
go ahead.
You know, there's, just in terms of ways that we can build trust together moving forward and when things come up, there's a lot of times I don't have the answer. I just don't know the answer to the thing you're asking. And I think one of the things that it scared the life out of me the first time I said it to a reporter on a hot mic, I just don't know that right now.
Yeah.
And it actually worked out really great, because then they could report, you know, these facts are yet to be determined. Or sometimes you do know something, and sharing it might make for a good news on January the 18th, but it might do real serious damage to the integrity of a prosecution or catching the person we're trying to catch. So there are times when I know for a fact I am withholding things because it's going to damage the case. For example, the shooting of our visitor from the West Coast. If we had immediately, if law enforcement immediately said, you're looking for this car and this person, then you're letting this person know that New Orleans is very close to them, right? And you have a better shot by not divulging everything immediately. And so sometimes I think it's really important to say, there's information that we have, we cannot share it at this time, but when it will not cause harm to the case, we will immediately get that information to you. And I find that most of the folks that I work with in the press respect that, appreciate it, and it puts them in a position to really tell an accurate story about what exists right now and what's not being shared. I don't know if that...
If you're credible, then the press will receive the fact that you may say, not yet. I called the father and I called the husband of our tourist who was killed. And, you know, I already knew some information. And yet it breaks my heart that I have to say to the crying husband, I'm saying to the father who's hungry for information, all they want is justice. And I get that, my heart breaks for it. But even I have to say, I can't tell you. Not yet. And so if you are credible, and hopefully even in that little bit of exchange, they knew, hopefully, that I was credible because I cared enough to call. And so you sometimes, again, it goes back to the basics of life, of relationship. But I will give you the information as soon as I can. I have some. I can't give it to you yet, right? Was the higher issue getting justice?
Any other?
Rich Nye with the TV station out of Indianapolis, Indiana. The DA spoke earlier about the trouble with see something, say something, just getting people to cooperate with investigations today. And that's something that we deal with as crime reporters. We show up shortly after the crime and we can't get people to talk to us either.
Yeah.
Do you have any ideas on how we can work together or how we foster an environment where people are more willing to talk about what has happened and cooperate with investigations?
You know, I struggle with that on a regular basis, and I think figure out ways to protect people when they do share information, being honest enough to say, or vulnerable enough to let other people be vulnerable to say, are you scared for your safety? If you're scared for your safety, would you be willing to give a comment? If we don't put your face on the news, could we put your words on the news? Can you direct us maybe to another neighbor? You know, it's really hard. There's an extreme fear that exists. Sometimes it's rational, sometimes it's completely irrational. Sure. It doesn't matter if it's your fear. And so whatever ways that, whether it's Ann, whether it's myself, whether it's you, putting people at ease and giving them the safety that they feel they need, because these folks are going back to that home in that community that was littered with gunfire after we go back to our homes and our jobs, and they've got to live with that. So figuring out ways that we can truly deliver on that commitment, whether it's witness protection. We don't have robust witness protection in this community. The federal government has that. I try to explain to people that if they cooperate quickly and other neighbors cooperate quickly, we can get that individual off the street faster. Because if you don't cooperate and they stay on the street, then you do have a real reason to be afraid because they saw you too, right? So it's rebuilding trust, or maybe it's building trust for the first time. I'm not sure, but having that dialogue, I think, seems to get more participation. And the civic engagement is sort of in the toilet in the country right now. We're not teaching it the same way that we once did, which means people don't understand their role and how important it is.
All right, that wraps up. I do have one question, but that wraps it up. Did you guys enjoy that conversation?
Yes.
Thank you.
I want to thank our panelists for being
Thank you.
here. Getting the
you.
firestorm, answering some tough questions as well. But this is what it's all about. As journalists, we're going to ask you the tough questions, whether we do have a concern about something or if we feel as though we want more answers, and also getting the understanding of being on the same page. Like you said, it's a dance. We might step on each other's shoes, but at the end of the day, we have to all be on the same accord if we want to get the information out to the public. So thank you so much for joining us. We
Correct. Thank
appreciate
you
it.
so much.
Thank you all so much, guys. Enjoy the rest of your day.
Good to see you. Thank you so much. Pleasure to have been here. Appreciate it.
You guys can exit that way.
Okay.